Are you ready to learn what it takes to be a successful attorney? You're listening to Corner Office with me, Elise Powers. I'm sitting down with some of the most successful attorneys so you can learn how they made it to the top of the legal industry. You'll hear their advice for how you can forge your unique path to success. Michael, welcome to Corner Office. I'm so excited to have you here. You are a partner at Vorys Labor and Employment Group and the co-chair of the Hiring Committee. You have had such an interesting path to get to where you are today. You're a first-generation attorney from a small town. You went to Ohio State, the Ohio State University, for undergraduate and law school. I'm from Cincinnati, so I understand the importance of the before Ohio State. Why'd you decide to become a lawyer?
Well, first, Elise, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and excited to chat a little bit about my path and our firm, of course. I decided to be a lawyer. I don't know when that happened, probably sometime in middle school or junior high. And I don't know really why, other than it just seemed to be a good fit for me. I like problem solving. I was never drawn to higher level math, so that sort of took any kind of STEM option off the table for me. I don't mind public speaking. I enjoy it. And I really like the ability to stand up in front of people, whether that is clients or whether that's a court or an administrative agency, and tell a story and try and convince someone that my client's position is the right one. I've had the pleasure of working with clients of all kinds of different backgrounds and getting a chance to meet people and learn their business and help them with their problems. It's been rewarding, and that's sort of what I was looking for, I think, in my evolving desire to be an attorney.
Yeah, so most people hate the idea of speaking in front of a crowd and having to put together a story and then convey the story. How did you learn that confidence? Like, how did that get instilled in you?
I don't know, honestly, Elise. And interestingly, it's not a universal confidence for me. I am admittedly not a good singer at all. And so if you told me I had to sing in front of people, I would be incredibly nervous about that. But for me, I think it's about connecting. It's about the process as you're speaking of reading someone else's body language, even if you have a group of 400, 500 or more people in front of you, finding someone in that group who's making eye contact with you and trying to understand, are you persuading them or not? And if you're not, in that moment, trying to find a way to change your angle, change your tactics, and convince them of what it is you're saying. So I don't know where that came from, to be honest, but that's what I enjoy about it. And I think there is also that a little bit of an adrenaline rush. I learned some confidence with being nervous. One of my mentors told me years ago, and he's been an incredibly successful lawyer at our firm. He's now in his mid-60s, that he still gets nervous at first when he takes a plaintiff's deposition. And that, to me, made it okay to be a little bit nervous when you sit down to depose someone or to stand up at an oral argument. I figured if someone's been doing it for 40 some years and is good at it as he is, then that must be part of the process.
Yeah, as a public speaker myself, I find that feeling nervous is a good thing. Like, I can't imagine being in a job where I didn't have those nerves or jitters or adrenaline, because then life would be so boring. And so I often tell people, if you're not feeling that amped up sensation, like, you got to do something a little different here, because you want to feel like you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and I think it keeps you sharp.
Yeah.
It drives you to prepare. It drives you to be better in the moment, and then to debrief and assess after the fact. I think that's so important.
How did you learn the art of making it interesting? Not that labor and employment law isn't the most riveting topic, but I do think that it's a skill to develop the storytelling. How do I convey complex things in a way that someone who isn't a labor and employment attorney can actually understand?
I usually start by pressure testing something like that with someone who's not a lawyer. if it's something that's privileged, that can be someone in our law firm. I've got a fantastic assistant who I rely on and who I trust, and who I will often ask when I'm writing any type of argument or outlining any sort of presentation, what does she think? Is it interesting? Is it not interesting? Then I think you also, I like to take a step back. I'll prepare something. I will maybe give it a day or two to rest, and then go back to it with fresh eyes and think through, how are these various approaches going to land?
I like the idea of going to someone who isn't an attorney and gauging, like, were they able to put it all together based on how I kind of spun it?
Sure. And that's something I do, and I recommend our younger lawyers do all the time. After a deposition, I'll always ask the court reporter for their thoughts.
Really?
Absolutely. Now, some of them, I don't know that they're supposed to share their thoughts too directly, but many of them will. And even if it's not on the substance, it's questions. Did you understand what was going on? What did you think? Did you think the witness was believable? Did you understand our story? How was my presentation? Was I speaking too fast? Was it not clear? And I've gotten some really good feedback from those court reporters, because much like our legal assistants here, the court reporter has seen more legal work than many lawyers.
Yeah. What's a piece of feedback that stuck with you or surprised you?
Speak slowly. And despite my use of it right there, try and avoid filler words like take a pause and give your thoughts in the clearest way that you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that our brains can move so much faster than our mouth. And so it leads us to use these pesky filler words, and it can be distracting. It can be irritating to some people to hear them. So it's an exercise of really control and discipline to slow down your pacing so that you don't have to fill in with those likes, us.
Sure. And even though I've gotten better at that over the years, one of the things I still dread the most is reading a deposition transcript when it comes in. I'm not good at opening it right away and going through it. For some reason, I need a day or two to get my courage up before I read whatever my ums and ahs were on the page. And there's nothing better than a good court reporter who helps clean some of those things up for you.
Right. It reminds me of college when I'd close my eyes before looking at a test score online. I just can't bear. I need a couple hours before I force myself to see the results. So when you were in law school, you kind of went above and beyond. You weren't just a student, but you also worked for multiple federal judges. You worked at a mid-sized firm. You had kind of this almost winding path to end up to where you are today. So I'm interested in, what was the most formative experience? Was it externing? Was it working at this mid-sized firm?
I don't know that I can pick a most influential experience, Elise. If I had to, I would say it was both of my externships. I had a chance to extern for two fantastic judges on two opposite sides of the political spectrum, both of whom have been wildly successful in their own right in different ways and at different things. And I learned a ton from each of them and from their law clerks. And I use those things in the litigation aspect of my practice every day. And both of them were uniform in their advice that the most important thing you have as an advocate is your credibility with the court. And so I would say that's the thing I use the most. But beyond that, in my day-to-day practice, I learned more about the practice of law working at a smaller law firm, about 12 lawyers in North Canton, Ohio, owned by the named partner of the firm. I learned more from him about the practice of law and the business of law than almost anyone else in my career. And I'm still in touch with him and consider him a mentor and a friend. And I'm fortunate to have that relationship still.
So when you say the most important thing you have is credibility with the court, what are some things that you do to build instant credibility? Or if it's easier, what are some things that you've seen people do to diminish credibility?
I think with the court, you always have to be reasonable. And one of the things that I work with our younger lawyers on, whenever we are setting up an issue that we think is going to end up before the court, I want to put our client in a position for us to be able to say, look, Your Honor, here are the 10 things that have happened. And we have made efforts along the way to move to the middle, to be reasonable, to get to something that maybe you don't agree with, or maybe plaintiff's counsel doesn't agree with, but that is a reasonable position. And we try and do that in discovery disputes. In our briefing, always a believer that you should lead with your strongest argument. I think it gives you credibility when the judge recognizes that you've thought about your client's position, and not include arguments that have no likelihood of success.
So get to the main takeaway that you want them to have and show all of the efforts you've made to try and come up with a reasonable solution with the opposing party.
Absolutely.
What are some things that you've seen other attorneys do throughout your career that you think diminishes trust with the court?
Sure. Stretching the facts or stretching a record. We obviously, we zealously advocate for our clients, as we're required to do. And there are lines there that can be crossed. And so never stretching the truth of either a conversation with opposing counsel or what's in the evidentiary record is critical. And the second piece of that is, I have rarely seen a lawyer who is more effective by increasing their volume. Chest thumping and pounding the table and name calling never convinces a judge of the righteousness of your client's position.
And why is that? Do you think they seem almost out of control, or what is it that's unappealing?
Ultimately, the judge is there, and most judges, regardless of their political affiliation or background, I think, they view themselves as calling balls and strikes. They view themselves as a neutral who is ultimately going to have to make a decision. And so what they're interested in is the law and the facts that they need to have as the basis for the application of that law. And they're not interested in how strongly I believe in my client's case. I think they're interested in what's right and what's wrong and what the law says.
Yeah, the facts.
Correct.
I sometimes feel that especially younger lawyers, they can get very emotional about the work or even their relationships internally within the firm, and that can influence how they approach the work or influence how they approach client dynamics. And what's forgotten is that you're paid to be unemotional so that you can operate with sound judgment and not let your feelings shape how you approach something. That's why people hire attorneys, right? It's like you are not the person going through it yourself.
I 100% agree. And I would add to that, there are two components here. One is, as you said, you're hired to do a job. So keeping in mind some type of cost-benefit analysis. Is it worth it for the client to spend the money on that motion that we think has a 10% chance of success? And relatedly, when you get a motion filed against your client or an opposition that you believe stretches the truth or misstates the law, an emotional reaction that leads with some kind of bombastic rhetoric is rarely, I would say, the best approach. If the other side has stretched the truth or misstated something, we simply identify that for the court and move forward and explain why that's persuasive and why our client is right.
I want to go back, Michael, to something you've mentioned, and that's the mentors that you have in your life. You said you have someone, it sounds like at Vorys, and then someone you worked with while you were in law school. How have you found these mentors? It's a concept that's talked about all the time. You need mentors, and the actual getting of the mentor, like building trust with someone, finding someone who's interested in you. How did you forge those relationships?
Yeah, I don't know that my approach has any sort of rocket science to it, Elise. I've been really fortunate in my career. I've never struggled to find a mentor. My question when I'm presented with a problem has always been, which of my mentors should I go to get insights and get advice. And I think that for me starts with day-to-day trust and getting to know people on an individual level. It's really hard to go to someone and ask for their advice if they don't understand your background, they don't know you well enough to know the way you think, to know what your values are. And so the groundwork for a mentoring relationship is, in my view, in the little conversations and moments. It's basic human courtesy and decency, saying good morning. I still walk the halls on our floor, and if I'm walking by in the morning and I see someone for the first time, I'll yell in good morning. Not yell, but loudly enough that they can hear me. I am a huge believer in basic manners. Maybe it's because I have 2 little kids at home, but please and thank you. I am religious about that use in my emails and expect others to be as well. And I think people appreciate it. So as you look for mentors, you need to build, I think, those foundational conversations and moments. And then as far as how that evolves, part of it for me has always been looking for people who are in positions where I want to be someday. I'm interested in learning some of our senior partners. What's made you successful here at our law firm? Our law firm is unique in that we have people who stay for 40 plus years, and more than half of our partners started at our law firm as either first-year associates or summer associates.
Wow.
I don't have the statistics on it. I'm guessing that makes us a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
But they are people who want to be here, and our model is built on bringing in great people, training them to practice law the way that we practice law, and making them successful and making our firm successful over a long period of time. And so as our younger lawyers are looking for mentors, I think it's finding those folks who either have similar backgrounds or where you want to be someday, and building up a day-to-day relationship.
What I'm hearing is it's all about investing the time and energy in building that relationship before you need that person, right? So you're
Absolutely.
not just going to someone out of the blue, hey, I'm Elise and I have this issue that I'd like your advice on. It's you have gotten them invested in your life as a human being, not just as an attorney. They understand you, your tendencies, your thought process. And then as questions and challenges arise, you can go to them and they can provide helpful advice because of all of this context that they have.
I think that's right. And I will say, of course, every rule has its exceptions. One of my early mentors here was a partner, not in my practice group, on the side, closer to retirement in the beginning of his career. And we had shared some connections and friends through Ohio State, actually. And I had heard his name. I guess I'll just share his name. His name is Fred Ranciere. And I had heard as soon as I started at Vorys from some of my other mentors from law school that you need to search out Fred and find Fred and go to him with tough questions and look up to him. And so fortunately for me, randomly, my office at the firm, despite us having 400 lawyers, was across the hall from Fred's.
Wow.
And so very early on, we went to lunch a couple times, and he said to me at the first or second lunch that, look, I'm nearing retirement, but I'd like to be, I think he called himself an ombudsman, which I quickly went back to my office and confirmed that I understood what that word meant. But I'd like to be an ombudsman for you. You can come to me with anything. And that meant that early on, as I had questions about how the firm worked and some questions about my career, I just took a leap of faith that Fred was interested in being a mentor and was someone I could trust. And he gave me excellent advice. He's since happily moved on to retirement. And I miss his mentorship, though I've found others. But you have to take that leap of faith sometimes as well, that the person says they're willing to help you and they want to mentor you, they mean it.
And you find out if they mean it by, are they responding to the email? Are they making time to talk with you? Are they keeping things private between the two of you and not sharing it throughout the firm? So I almost think that there's this testing of the waters where you give ask a softball question that's not the super high stakes thing and make sure, okay, this is someone I feel like I can really open up to.
I don't disagree. And I think the next step here, and this is something that I really believe is not talked about enough, having mentors is great, but to succeed in your career, I think particularly at a law firm, you need more than mentors. You need advocates. You need people who are willing to go out of their way when an opportunity comes in to share that with you, to give it to you, to tell other people, hey, Johnny did a great job on this case, or I was in a bench trial with Jane the other day, and you should have seen the cross-examination she did of this witness. As you share information about other people, you become an advocate. And as a young lawyer, that's what you need, especially at a big law firm. Because there's, when you walk in the door as a first-year associate, partners in other groups and partners in your group, they don't know who you are. They don't know your reputation. They don't know if you're smart, committed, have a great work ethic. They have no idea. And so when those mentoring relationships evolve to the advocate level, I think that's really what can drive a career and make you successful. And I don't know that I'd still be at the firm if I didn't have those folks in my life helping me progress.
I imagine so much of it is just you hope that there are people who will go out of their way to talk about your successes and put your name in the hat when there's an opportunity. But what actions could a junior lawyer take to find those advocates and almost encourage people to advocate on their behalf?
Well, again, it goes back to the simple humanity of your job and doing what you do well. So as I've progressed through my career and looking back on my time as an associate, I think there's nothing more valuable to a senior lawyer and as a junior lawyer than having someone on your team to whom you can just give something, whether it's a project, a case, a client. And you know that when I give that thing to that person, they're going to do a great job and I don't have to think about it anymore. And what I have found is as you develop your craft and become good at that client service, and I mean that not just to clients of the firm, but your client, partners, other lawyers in the firm, you develop that trust. And it becomes a bit of paying it forward now for me. I mean, so many people did that for me over the years that I now view it as my job to advocate for others and to help make them successful. But it starts with being really good at being a junior lawyer and being trustworthy and being a part of the team.
What I'm hearing is almost this theme of taking ownership. If someone asks you to do something, you get it done. You treat it like this is my responsibility. And if I don't get it done, no one else will in a way. So how would you know, I think part of this is also taking initiative and thinking beyond just the task of, okay, I know what they asked me to do, but how does this fit into the bigger picture? How can I anticipate what's coming next? How would someone just be careful not to cross the line of overstepping when they're making that effort?
You have to communicate, and it does take time. For me, what I would always do, I would put together an email or a plan or a draft or something and send it to the person I was working with and say, hey, we had this call today. Here were my takeaways. Here's what I think are the next steps. What do you think? Can I move on this? I remember one of our partners in particular, I had done this for years, it felt like. And I finally, at one point, said, I think he was going away to a trial or something. And I said, hey, while you're out, do you want me just to do this? What do you think? And he said, well, you've sent me a ton of these emails over the last couple of years. How many times have I ever disagreed with your approach? And I thought about it and I said, well, not very often. He said, well, then you should just assume that I'm going to agree with it, that you're putting the thought in. And so that was helpful. But I think the other piece for a really junior lawyer is sometimes you have to ask. And that ownership isn't just ownership of the case or the client or the matter. It's the ownership of your career trajectory. And so I was on a case very early with one of our partners in a different practice group, and it was a case involving tons of witnesses and a very aggressive plaintiff's lawyer. And I went to the partner on the case and I said, Tom, I think I can cover some of these depositions. I'd like to take a deposition. I had to be a first or second year lawyer. And he went to the senior partner, who was the client relationship partner, who was the COO of our firm at the time, and said, John, what do you think? Michael wants to take a deposition. And John said no, which was okay. I mean, it wasn't because he didn't like me or didn't trust me and didn't think I was a great lawyer. It was because for the client, having the first-year lawyer take the deposition was not desirable.
The optics of that.
That was a learning point for me. Oh, that's right. It's not all about me. It's about the client. But I learned a lot about asking for opportunities, and you can't do it all the time. And you have to recognize when you have those moments. I've just done something really well, or we just had a great success in this case as a team. Can I look for an opportunity to step up? You have to know when those moments occur and not be afraid to ask. And I think as you ask to take the initiative, people start to allow you just to do it or to assume you'll do it. You get to a point as an associate where you're no longer asking, hey, partner, can I depose XYZ witness? The partner assumes you're the lead associate on the case. I assume you'll be taking the deposition. So it's a balancing act, and it takes time, Elise. And I think it's different for everyone, but that's been my experience.
Well, I'm hearing almost this distinction between being assertive versus aggressive. And then you also have the other end of the spectrum of being very passive. And I find a lot of associates veer too passive in many ways, but then can also be too aggressive where they're asking for too many things all at once and they're not reading the room in a way or having that patience of it will come with time. So I think just those examples you shared of asking to take the deposition, asking to just take the lead while the partner's out at trial are really concrete ideas that give insight into how you can advocate for your own opportunities.
And you have to, at some level, trust your decision-making in your process. One of the things that drew me to Vorys, and not to make it all about me or to go back to my career trajectory, but I summered at a law firm in an office that had never taken an associate from first-year associate to partner, to my knowledge. And as I was evaluating my career options, I was really attracted to the fact that Vorys had so many homegrown partners and had a track record of developing you across your career to a point where you had an opportunity to make partner. And so for people who are at firms like that or have mentors like that or advocates like that, I think you need to trust the process a little bit. And sometimes when we have junior lawyers who are very excited about wanting to develop and want to do the next big thing, the conversation is, I know that I think you're going to be great at that. You're going to be great at the oral argument. But let's talk about why we need the senior partner to do the oral argument, in the federal appeals court, and why we need you to write the brief. And then let's talk about my experience, what I learned, and why sometimes you think you're ready for that.
Yeah.
But it's the process of writing the brief and doing the blocking and tackling, and then seeing someone else get the ball across the finish line or handle the high pressure situation, where you learn over years and you build this library in your mind of ways to respond to difficult situations.
And I think it's also just this idea of asking for micro opportunities. It's not, I want to give the whole oral argument. It's what are some small steps I can take to be prepared to one day do that.
Yeah.
So, Michael, you're also the co-chair of the hiring committee, in addition to being a partner, being a mentor, being a mentee still as you learn from others. When you think about the mistakes someone makes when going through the interview process. Like I even think about someone who is lateraling and they are not happy with their group or the firm that they're currently at for whatever reason. Like, what are some of those mistakes people make? I wonder if, can you be too honest about what you're upset about in the interview process?
Of course you can be, but I think for laterals in particular, it's really important to have a reason that you're looking to make a move. And that varies over time. I think it also varies based on your personal experience and whether are you going from your third job to your fourth in 10 years or your first job to your second? And so I am always interested in the honest answer. And most of the time, it's not anything that causes a problem from a hiring standpoint. If it's the comp model at your firm, I want to hear. If it's your path to success appears to be foreclosed, and here are the reasons why, I want to hear that. I think, back to our point of credibility, it gives you instant credibility when, as an interviewer or someone having the first conversation with you about a potential lateral move, when I sense that you're being honest with me.
So I hadn't thought about it, that it's almost a red flag if there isn't a reason that you want to leave your current firm.
At least there's always a reason.
There's always a reason.
So if you tell me there's no reason, I don't find that to be credible. And sometimes it's something simple. Sometimes it's, look, things are going really well here, but I understand that I can make 20% more at your firm. That's still a reason. And if that's your reason, that's fine. But people don't change jobs just because. There's always something. And it makes me anxious when I don't feel like I'm getting an honest answer to that question.
And how do you feel about someone who's switching jobs, say every 2 years, switching firms every, say 2 years? There's almost this job hopping happening. Is that of concern to you?
It depends on whether or not there's a reason. I mean, we've had plenty of candidates come through who can explain, okay, the move from firm A to firm B wasn't actually a move. That was two firms combined. Okay, well, that makes sense. We take one hop off. Or what we see a lot of times with associates, especially after there's an active partner lateral market, is I didn't decide really to make the move from firm A to firm B, but at firm A, I was working with this one partner or these two partners or this subgroup, and the whole group or the partner moved to firm B. And so given the 2 years of mentorship and the trust, I moved over there with that person. We also, occasionally you have a reason that's driven by your family. Your partner decides or doesn't decide. Maybe they're in the medical profession and they've had an opportunity to take a fellowship in a different city. If your firm wouldn't allow you to work remotely, most people, when choosing between their partner and their job, they'll choose to live in the same city as their partner. So again, that's just about telling a story. To me, the most important thing for every candidate, law students, first-year candidates or summer candidates, and laterals, what is the story of your resume? Because as I read through it, I'm attempting to divine that, but I want to hear it from you. How do we connect all of these things from the start to the end? For whatever time frame you put on the resume, what is that arc and what's your story?
It's interesting that this theme of storytelling emerges again. We talked about it as a litigator, and as an individual, you need to almost take the reins and you get to craft what your personal story is. How do people think of you when you're not in the room? What do you want people to remember about you? How might someone start thinking about how to weave everything together? Because it sounds simple, but it's kind of challenging to tell this story about, say, if you went straight through 25 years of your life or 35 years of your life, to make it all make sense.
That, to me, depends on your circumstance. And I think you have to find what is the core of what drives you. I like to tell young lawyers or aspiring lawyers when we're at these career fairs or employment meetings, people often come up to me and say, Michael, how did you select labor and employment law? And I almost always lead with, you are going to find this answer completely unsatisfying. Because for me, it was about people and about an individual opportunity and connecting with people and feeling like, okay, well, that area of law doesn't necessarily draw me in as a law student, but those people I really liked, and I could see them mentoring me and being a part of their team. I'm interested in that. For other people, it's their area of law. One of my partners, he practices in construction law. He loves construction law. That is his thing. He loves the practice. He's great at it. And that's what seems to drive him at work every day. I think that you need to step back as you think about your story and think, what is it that what theme can I pull out? Is it geography? Is it people? Is it an area of law that interests me? and try and weave that through each of your stops or chapters, I guess, of that story to torture the metaphor.
Well, I love just how you simplified it to what drives you. And I think what's so powerful about that is it also ties into you being passionate and enthusiastic about what you're doing or what you want to do. And that's something that I hear about all the time from partners is I want to feel like you want to be here, that you're excited and interested and engaged and you're invested in this. And so when you can tie in what drives you and what has driven you throughout your life, I think you're accomplishing that other part of it.
I only have my experience here, right, at the Vorys firm. And for us, that's so important because I didn't know, as you mentioned at the outset here, I was a first-generation lawyer. I grew up in a small town. I didn't know that law firms of 400 people, much less 4,000 people, existed. I didn't know what labor and employment law was. I didn't know what corporate law was. And I learned over the course of law school a little bit of that. I did well in school and I liked the people I met. And I sort of stumbled my way in to this type of practice of law. And that story is fairly common around our firm. And what that means is a lot of us share this sense of gratitude for walking into a firm that had already existed, in my case, for more than 100 years before I stepped in the door. And I'm so thankful for what was built before me and feel a real sense of obligation to the law firm and a sense of gratitude to the law firm that drives me to want to pass that on. So when you mention people who want to be here, that to me is one of the most important things. I want someone who can see something that's bigger than themselves, who recognizes that they may have a great story, but if they want to come here, they're part of another story then. And these things layer, and you're part of this team and you're going to make your contribution. But that's really what we try and identify in our hiring process. And it's really difficult and we're not perfect at it by any means.
Yeah.
But I agree with you 100% in identifying that those are the types of traits that some firms will value.
I think a lot of firms value it, and it's not talked about explicitly enough, where it almost puts candidates or law students at a disadvantage where they think, what's the big deal about me showing that I'm enthusiastic? Like, I have a 4.0 GPA. Isn't that what you care about? I'm willing to work the hours. But it really makes a huge difference in how you're perceived. And I think it comes down to if you seem invested, if you seem enthusiastic, I have more trust that you're going to do a good job, that you're going to get it across the finish line, that you're going to be a team player who has my back. And that just cannot be overstated.
I agree. And showing not just that you have an interest in doing that, I want to see that you've done it. One of my go-to lines about hiring is the greatest indicator of future success is past success. So if we want someone who's going to come here, if we want people who are going to show up and ingrain themselves in the culture, be a part of their practice group, their sub-practice, the firm as a whole, then when I look back at your undergraduate performance, I want to hear, what did you do besides go to class? What was fun for you? What motivated you? If you worked for 10 years between your undergraduate and law school experience, what did you do? How did you become a part of a team, show leadership, show investment? And then for our lateral candidates, same thing. I'm interested in, are the things that you feel like you're not getting at your current job, things that we're good at offering you?
You want to make sure that they're coming to a place where they're going to be satisfied and stay long term.
Correct. And that their past performance and decisions suggest that that's likely to happen here.
Right. Well, Michael, you have just given me so much to think about. I think my big takeaways are your comments about it's not just finding mentors, it's finding advocates, people who are going to promote you with their peers. Like, you're not in the meeting, but the partners are meeting and they're talking about you. And then this idea of being a strong storyteller and weaving into your story what drives you. So I can't thank you enough for your insight, your advice, these stories that you shared with me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed our conversation very much, and I hope that some of it was helpful to someone else as well.
It certainly was.
Thanks for listening to Corner Office with me, Elise Powers. Be sure to follow me on LinkedIn for weekly tips on how to accelerate your career. If you're loving this podcast, I would be so grateful if you'd click follow on your favorite listening platform. While you're there, give us a 5-star rating. If you're interested in having me speak at your organization, or if you have topics you'd like us to cover on the podcast, send me a note at info@eleviewconsulting.com. That's info@ELEVIEW consulting.com. All opinions expressed by Elise and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Eleview Consulting or any law firm. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as legal advice or the basis for legal decisions.